Thank you for your presentation, because I think it was also quite interesting, and especially as a journalist, I was impressed by all you have said. So we received two questions. The first is for Kacem, and the first question to Kacem is asking, why is homosexuality illegal in so many Muslim countries? Can you answer to it? I have also a personal question for you after. But you have to push this now.
The question of homosexuality, or let's say in general individual liberties, but just let's stick to the homosexuality in Islamic world. Besides the historical background, we knew that in the Arab literature, within the time of the Prophet Muhammad, there was also poems where poets, I could mention Abu Nawas, Arabic poet who writes poems describing boys and how beautiful they are and what he likes and so on, kind of erotism. Feminine, we don't have actually, about females in literature. But the source, if you try to ask anyone who's a homophobe, why are you a homophobe? Usually, not in the Islamic world or here in Europe, the answer is irrational. It could not, because basically there is no rational answer for that. It could be because the image that he gets in his mind and he sends his child from the family, the society, that's the normal is usually the opposite, and not to have sexual acts with the same sex. So this is globally. I could see that even here in Europe, sometimes justified when I came in my culture that when you greet someone, you kiss on the cheek as you do with a girl. It has nothing to do with homosexuality, but I found that some men here still, they feel like, no, stay away, don't kiss me, what do you want? It hides something there. It's culturally, like if we try to find the chronology of this thought, you will lead also to some homophobic roots. But in Islam especially, we find that recently we had a debate in Morocco, and there is a Muslim cleric. He said that homosexuals should be thrown from a high place, like a tower or a high building. And the interpretation of a hadith of the Prophet. But still, high place in the times of the Prophet, maybe it was a tent, or how could we imagine right now the highest? It's still, the problem is the people and their interpretation of this text. They don't make them modern, or just to try to read them with the eyes of nowadays. We have an association in Morocco that advocates for homosexuality, because in the Moroccan penal code, any sexual act, man or woman, is punished by jail. And this organization, they are fighting for their rights, but unfortunately, the leaders are based abroad in Paris or around Europe. So I hope that situation changes. But to give a simple answer to this question, I can't, because it's quite complicated. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. I have also a question for Mr. Verzilov, saying a lot of the Western countries consider the Pussy Riots as a woman liberation movement. However, it also could be considered as a political propaganda or a movement against the present government of Russia. Which of these opinions do you prefer? liberation of women or the propaganda movement against the regime, or both of them?
Well, I think in a lot of cases that were discussed today where women's issues were touched, these two things don't really, can't really be separated from each other, right? So just as in Russia, just as in any Islamist or totalitarian country, basically the fight for any single group of people means anti-government activity. So obviously Pussy Riot is a punk feminist band which is founded by a group of girls with basically leftist feminist values who have an interest in contemporary art, contemporary culture, music, and but in Russia, if you put up questions of feminism, you'll right away bump into political issues because, well, you know, we have President Putin was, there was this funny story when he was caught at a press conference in Israel. And, well, some of you might know that one of the former Israeli presidents, he was indicted for raping, I think, like 8 or 9 of his secretaries, a very serious amount. And so Vladimir Putin went to Israel, and he's sitting at some panel, and his microphone is, he wasn't supposing that it was off, and he said, talking to the Israeli Prime Minister, "Your president is a real man, we all envy him." So, meaning this really shows the very sexist stance of President Putin, and because, well, Russia's politics is an endless reflection of personal favors and personal preferences by Vladimir Putin. Obviously, sexism and anti-feminism and the absence of women's rights is a very necessary feature of Russian political landscape. So, if you fight for women's rights, for feminist values, you'll obviously be doing anti-government, anti-Putinist activity.
Okay, so thank you. I have also a question for Mr. Akhmedyarov. We get the impression, it's not an impression, but the fact that the Kazakh regime is becoming more and more oppressive, repressive since a few years, as you have showed with the case of the press. Do you have the impression that this repression can go longer, or it will be an end at the end? You know, we will find an end once a day.
Очень хочется надеяться, что конец.
I hope that the end of this regime is nigh. That's what we must hope. But actually, we have a lot of examples in past history where we thought that a dictatorship could not last eternally. For example, North Korea or in Iran. The leaders were in power for quite a while. And in Kazakhstan, the leader may just stay on. But I think we should express this differently. The question is actually not how long he will stay in power, how long will the international community tolerate him? How long will the population put up with him? The price of oil is good at the time being. But if there is greater awareness, then the regime may come to an end more rapidly than we think today.
I have also a personal question to Pyotr and Kacem. Do you don't think, or are you accused to, you are very provocative, and I think it could be a very good thing But do you you don't fear that maybe the provocation could be seen as pure provocation and can hide your message? You understand? Because, for instance, if you go in a church or a synagogue to make some what the Pussy Riots have made, you know, the problem could be that the provocation is the first thing the people can see and not the message, if you understand my question. Is it not a risk for you, or how do you deal with that?
I don't consider it a provocation. It was for me or for? Okay. Actually, in my case, and as I see it also in the case of Pussy Riot, let's say by me, I didn't provoke anyone. The religion provokes me. The religion was imposed on me. They wanted me to be in certain image which is not mine. And what I didn't insult. However, here the insult tells when it's not personal, when it is to a faith or to an ideology or to an idea or whatever, there I am free. I have absolute freedom to say whatever I want. But when it's to the person, or it's with as radical and fundamentalist Muslims do when they start spreading and preaching their fatwas against the free thinkers, against the people who try at least to have a space of mind where they could be like they are, not to pretend to be like what society wants them to shape them in certain image. So provocation for me, I don't believe in this term when it's not personal. So if I fight for my right to be a non-Muslim, or if I fight for my right to be a homosexual, or whatever it is, that doesn't mean I'm provoking you, or doesn't mean I'm trying to take something from you, or I'm trying to steal your rights. In fact, I'm trying to find a way to live my civil rights in a modern society, in a modern world, without this small laws that persecute everyone who tries to be different. And I was all the time telling that if you just remain silent, nobody would harm you, you will be, yeah, of course I know that, but I was not made for that, there are others. I feel while I am moving, that means I am free. And while I am moving and I could make my situation better, it's change and it's a process, it's not an event. What's happening now in North Africa and the Arab Spring scene, however the Islamists, however everything, we still believe that probably in the future we have a hope in the new generation, and we have a hope in people like me. However, I'm still 23 years old, but I still feel like there is a lot of young people who are the same like me, who we want to have peace in the world, and that's everything. We are not demanding more.
The answer I will give is a purely artistic answer because, well, from artistic points of view, the term provocation doesn't really exist. Instead, you have what can be called as artistic necessity, right? Like you wouldn't say that Cézanne was provocative because he chose very weird colors and shadows, or Picasso or Malevich because they stopped using classical lines and classical objects, and instead they started drawing some funny figures and triangles on their paintings. That is never called a provocation. The artist uses unusual methods to convey the meaning and the message through his art when he understands that the usual conventional tactics will not reach his audience, will not bring the message, the necessary message to the person he's trying to reach. For example, as with the girls, with Pussy Riot's punk prayer inside Moscow Cathedral of Christ the Savior, it was done as a reply to Patriarch Kirill actively joining into Putin's presidential campaign. So basically by doing this, he brutally broke very important religious territory, which basically says that religious leaders of such important and gigantic congregations do not have the right to get themselves directly involved in politics. So as a response to that, obviously the band Pussy Riot chose this, well, quite aggressive and quite direct formal method, because it was the only appropriate reply and the only appropriate and adequate and artistically relevant formal method which could be used in this situation.
Thank you for your answer. I think it was very, very good and pertinent and relevant. So I think we are now arriving to the end of our panel, and I would like to ask maybe the last question, which joined mine. So that's good. So somebody in the room ask you, three of you, what in your lives or for your wife made you have the courage to speak out, and when most others are quiet, stay silent. So, and my question was, where do you find the energy, the strength to express yourself and to lead you to fight for human rights? So that's the same theme. Maybe, yes, Mr. Akhmedyarov, you can begin.
Ну, наверное, я этим занимаюсь.
If I do the work that I do, it's because I don't know how to do anything else. It's my work. It's my profession, and I like it. I do it willingly, gladly. Now, you also asked me today if after the attack on me, if I wasn't tempted to change my job. Because if I had, no, that would have meant that those who carried out the attack had won. They had frightened me. There's another factor. When my wife came to see me in the hospital and she showed me the newspapers, they talked about a protest meeting against this attack, and I saw the pictures. The demonstration had not been authorized, but people had gone to the streets, taken to the streets to demonstrate on my behalf. And it was at that juncture that I realized, and I don't want to be maudlin about it, but I realized that I couldn't go back. And that I could no longer, I had to go forward, I couldn't slide backward. I didn't want to disappoint all these people.
I usually try to ask myself, am I courageous, and did I really did something which is, as you described, probably, if we could say between brackets, brave? But I don't think so. I just defended myself. I just wanted, it's like you cannot call me a brave if I am in a very miserable situation and I saved myself out. But I would call you a brave if you are in a safe area and you tried to give refuge to someone or to save others. So for me, all the time I go from this philosophy of life. While I could do something, I don't like to be a military, I don't like to die, that's not my culture. But I would like to live, I love life, I love many beautiful things in life, but still I would like to fight to make this life better. And while I have this possibility and I could improve my skills and I could get engaged with others to reach this noble aim, then why not? Otherwise, I'm losing. I'm the loser. If I just remain silent and still with this schizophrenia, with these double standards. I have a personality for outside, another one inside, and I live in a world of lies. And all the time when I feel I'm free, I only feel free with my papers and pens, and I talk with my thoughts. That's beautiful. It could bring us a great novel, but in the same time, it will not make me happy. I need to share my happiness and practice it and have it real. So that's the key, or that's the simple answer.
Well, I think for me, as for members of the of art collective we were related to in the past several years, the situation of getting energy to do something every day derives from the impossibility to stay silent, because, well, yeah, and another artistic answer, the artist has, well, I think not the artist, but just any person who's deeply involved in politics, who's deeply touched by social, economic, or whatever politically related issue, he does not have the ability to stay put and to not do something when things are happening around him, which basically are a driving force to his mind, right? So Russia, for example, the Russian parliament, in the last 6 months, it's called a mad printer, right? Because it's in the last several months, it printed out this amazing amount of the most absurd laws, like from the one that I mentioned before, like restricting the right to say that gay relationships are equal to heterosexual relationships, to the right to have rallies, to the right to criticize religious activities. So when Russia is a very it's kind of a very very fairy tale like story, especially present day Russia, when you have amazing poverty, amazing richness, and once you're living in this very energetic reality, which you perceive as a battlefield, as long as you're in it, you wake up and you function from day to day, and you feel that you're basically in the middle of a battle, and if you'll stop moving, you'll just be torn apart by your own inactivity, because there are so many things happening around you that absolutely demand your reaction, that your body will not be able to take you not acting, not speaking, not trying to do what you can do to counter, to do what you think is right towards those subjects and issues.
Okay, so thank you. I think we can applaud our panelists because they were very relevant. Thank you to everybody of you. Good luck for your fight. We hope to see you again here. And so thank